whispers began the moment she stepped into the ballroom. Not because Sarah Miller commanded attention, but because she so clearly didn't belong. Her second-hand dress and practical heels might as well have been a neon sign, flashing imposter, among the sea of designer gowns and custom tuxedos. But Sarah wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here to work. Before we dive into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. The Crystal Hotel's grand ballroom sparkled under chandeliers that probably cost more than Sarah's annual salary. Golden light reflected off champagne flutes and diamond earrings as Seattle's elite mingled at the Callaway Foundation's annual charity gala. Sarah clutched her clipboard tighter, a shield against the opulence surrounding her. Remember, you're just here to manage the silent auction items, she whispered to herself. 3 hours. Then you can go home to your plants and that documentary about deep-sea creatures. At 32, Sarah had built a comfortable life. Modest apartment, reliable car, and enough savings to occasionally splurge on good coffee. As the administrative director for a small environmental nonprofit, she took pride in her organization's work. Even if it didn't come with glamour or recognition, she'd only agreed to help at tonight's gala because the foundation had promised a substantial donation to her organization if the event went well. The Callaways were new money tech billionaires with a reputation for lavish philanthropy and equally lavish parties. Sarah wove through the crowd, invisible as wallpaper. She preferred it that way. The auction tables needed arranging before bidding opened, and she moved with efficient precision, straightening item descriptions and checking that each bid sheet was properly labeled. "Excuse me," came a sharp voice behind her. "The help is supposed to use the service entrance." Sarah turned to face a woman with immaculate blonde hair, swept into a complicated updo. Her red dress clinging to a frame that spoke of personal trainers and private chefs. "I'm Sarah Miller, coordinating the silent auction for—" "I don't care if you're coordinating world peace," the woman said, diamond bracelets jingling as she gestured toward a side door. "Service entrance, now." Sarah's cheeks flushed. "I'm not catering staff. I'm the administrative director for Green Pacific, working with the Callaway Foundation on the auction." The woman, Margot Reynolds, according to her diamond-encrusted name badge, narrowed her eyes. "Well, you certainly look like catering staff in that ensemble." Several nearby guests turned to watch, champagne glasses pausing midway to their lips. "Perhaps next time consider attire that doesn't scream discount department store," Margot added, just loud enough for nearby clusters to hear. She flicked imaginary dust from her shoulder and glided away, leaving Sarah burning with embarrassment. Sarah forced herself to breathe normally as she returned to organizing bid sheets. She hadn't expected to be mistaken for hotel staff, but she also hadn't expected anyone to actually notice her at all. "Don't mind Margot," said a warm voice beside her. "She treats everyone that way, even people in designer clothes." Sarah looked up to see a man in his late 30s, with kind eyes and a slightly rumpled tuxedo. Unlike everyone else in the room, he seemed uncomfortable in his formal wear. "Dr. James Callaway," he said, extending his hand. "My sister and I fund this circus." Sarah nearly dropped her clipboard. This was one of the Callaway siblings? The reclusive genius behind Callaway Restoration Technologies? "Sarah Miller," she managed. "I'm coordinating the auction items for Green Pacific." "Ah, the Coastal Rehabilitation Initiative. Impressive work." His genuine smile made the knot in her stomach loosen slightly. "Those mangrove restoration techniques you've pioneered are fascinating." Sarah blinked in surprise. Most donors never bothered learning what exactly they were funding. "Thank you," she said. "Though I can't take credit for the technical aspects. I just make sure the paperwork gets filed and the scientists have what they need." "Don't underestimate administration," James said. "Without people like you, brilliant ideas would stay trapped in laboratories." Before Sarah could respond, the evening's second humiliation arrived in the form of spilled champagne. The crash of glass drew all eyes in their direction. Margot Reynolds stood there, her hand still extended where her champagne flute had accidentally tipped over, drenching the auction bid sheets and splashing onto Sarah's dress. "Oh my," Margot said with theatrical concern. "How clumsy of me. Though perhaps it's improved that dress." Sarah froze, mortification burning through her as droplets trickled down her skirt. The expensive paper bid sheets, hours of work, were ruined, champagne soaking through the carefully prepared descriptions. "These need to be replaced immediately," Margot announced loudly. "Where's the event coordinator? We can't have wet papers for the auction." She turned to address the growing audience of onlookers. "This is why we hire professionals, not volunteers." The way she said volunteers made it sound like vagrants. James stepped forward, his expression hardening. "I'll handle this, Margot." "James, darling," Margot purred, her tone shifting instantly. "I didn't see you there. I was just helping your little charity worker with a small mishap." "I saw exactly what happened," James replied coolly. He turned to Sarah. "I apologize for the interruption. Let me help you with these." To her amazement, the billionaire tech genius dropped to one knee beside her, gathering the soaked papers. "Mr. Calloway, please," Sarah whispered, mortified. "You don't need to." "James," he corrected, speaking loudly enough for others to hear. "And I insist. My family's name is on this event." He shot Margot a pointed look that made her retreat a few steps. Working together, they salvaged what they could. The crowd, disappointed by the lack of further drama, gradually dispersed. "I have copies in my bag," Sarah said, voice still shaking slightly. "I always prepare backups." James's expression brightened. "Of course you do. Preparation is the backbone of success." Margot hadn't gone far. She returned with a tall, distinguished man in tow. "Philip, darling, James is getting his tuxedo dirty helping the staff. Perhaps you could remind him of tonight's speech?" Philip Whitcomb III, Sarah recognized him from the Foundation's board photos, adjusted his bow tie with manicured fingers. "James, the podium awaits. The auction coordinator can handle this situation." "The auction coordinator has a name," James replied. "Miss Miller is doing us a favor by lending her expertise tonight." Philip's gaze swept over Sarah dismissively. "Yes, well, your sister is looking for you. The major donors expect to see both Calloways before opening their checkbooks." James hesitated, glancing between Sarah and Philip. The weight of obligation was clear on his face. "Go ahead," Sarah said softly. "I've got this under control." With a grateful nod, James followed Philip toward the stage, leaving Sarah to rebuild the auction display alone. She worked efficiently, replacing the soggy bid sheets with crisp new copies from her emergency folder. The evening progressed, with Sarah fading back into invisibility. She monitored the silent auction tables, answering occasional questions with professional courtesy while avoiding Margot's orbit. From across the room, she spotted James giving his speech, something about technology and environmental restoration, but she was too far away to hear properly. 2 hours into the event, disaster struck for the third time. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the evening's MC, "we have a special treat tonight. The Callaway Foundation is offering an exclusive demonstration of their breakthrough restoration technology. Dr. James Callaway has requested our auction coordinator explain the science behind their latest innovation." Sarah's heart stopped. This wasn't part of the plan. She hadn't prepared for this. James appeared beside her, microphone in hand. "Sarah, would you mind joining me? Your organization's work inspired our latest project." All eyes turned to her. Margot's triumphant smirk was visible from across the room. "I'm not qualified," Sarah whispered frantically. "I handle paperwork, not presentations." "The truth is," James said into the microphone, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Miss Miller is being modest. Her background in marine biodiversity before moving to administration makes her uniquely qualified to explain our work." Sarah felt lightheaded as James guided her toward the small stage. A large screen lowered from the ceiling, displaying complex diagrams of oceanic restoration systems. "This is sabotage," hissed Margot as they passed. "Everyone knows administrators don't understand the science. You'll embarrass yourself. And worse, the foundation." Sarah trembled as she took the microphone. Hundreds of wealthy, influential people stared expectantly. In the front row, Philip Whitcomb whispered something to his tablemates, who chuckled in response. The screen behind her displayed a complex ecosystem restoration model, one she recognized from her previous work. Before becoming an administrator, Sarah had spent 5 years as a field researcher with a doctorate in marine biology. She had abandoned that path after a research funding disaster had left her disillusioned with academia. James stepped back, giving her the floor. Sarah took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. The familiar diagrams on screen, coral polyp regeneration patterns, oceanic current flow models, marine ecosystem interdependencies, suddenly brought her back to her research days. "What you're looking at," she began, her voice initially soft but growing stronger, "is a revolutionary approach to large-scale coral reef restoration." She stepped closer to the screen, pointing to specific elements with unexpected confidence. Traditional restoration methods plant coral fragments individually, slow, labor-intensive work that can't keep pace with degradation. The Callaway technology creates engineered substrate matrices with optimal surface chemistry for polyp adhesion, while incorporating beneficial bacterial communities. As Sarah spoke, her natural expertise emerged. Technical terms flowed effortlessly: aragonite precipitation rates, zooxanthellae symbiont populations, nutrient cycling dynamics. Her hands gestured precisely as she explained complex concepts in accessible ways. By manipulating these nanomaterials at the molecular level, we've increased coral settlement rates by 340% in laboratory conditions, while reducing pathogen susceptibility. The room fell completely silent. Margot's smug expression had vanished, replaced by obvious discomfort. Philip Whitcomb had stopped mid-sip, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. "The breakthrough isn't just technological," Sarah continued, warming to her subject. "It's philosophical. We're not trying to recreate past reef structures. We're creating adaptive foundations for future ecosystems resilient to warming oceans and acidification." She navigated through the presentation slides with practiced ease, explaining each technical diagram with clarity that transformed complex science into compelling narrative. What makes the Callaway system truly revolutionary is its scalability. Using autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with these substrate printers, we can restore thousands of square meters of reef habitat annually at a fraction of traditional costs. James stood to the side, watching with an expression of growing admiration. When Sarah finished her impromptu lecture, the silence held for 3 long seconds before the room erupted in applause. "That," announced James, stepping forward, "is why Green Pacific's work deserves our support. Their expertise, embodied by Dr. Sarah Miller, represents the kind of knowledge our technology needs to succeed." Dr. Sarah Miller. He had used her academic title, something she had deliberately left off her professional credentials for years. The crowd surged forward with questions, no longer seeing an administrative assistant, but a scientific authority. Several attendees who had previously brushed past her now pressed business cards into her hands. Margot's face had gone from pale to blotchy red. She stood rigid near the champagne fountain, her fingers white-knuckled around her glass. When Sarah glanced her way, Margot abruptly turned her back, shoulders tense beneath her designer gown. "That was unexpected," Philip said, approaching with a forced smile. "You never mentioned your scientific background." "You never asked," Sarah replied simply. Her heart still raced, adrenaline coursing through her veins. After years of hiding behind administrative tasks, stepping back into the scientific spotlight felt like removing a mask she'd forgotten she was wearing. James appeared at her side, beaming. "I should have warned you, but I wasn't sure you'd agree if I had." "You knew?" Sarah asked, still processing what had just happened. "I read your dissertation on polyp regeneration after acidification events." James lowered his voice. "When I saw your name on the auction coordinator list, I recognized it immediately. Your research shaped our entire approach." Sarah felt heat rising in her cheeks. "That was a lifetime ago." "Clearly not," he said. "Knowledge like that doesn't just disappear." Guests continued to approach, asking detailed questions about research parameters and implementation schedules. Sarah answered each one with growing confidence, her body gradually relaxing into the role of expert rather than assistant. Across the room, Candace Calloway, James's sister and co-founder of their empire, watched with unmasked interest. Eventually, she made her way through the crowd. "James has been trying to recruit you for months," Candace said without preamble. "Now I see why." "Recruit me?" Sarah's brow furrowed. "I don't understand. My brother respects people who understand both the science and the systems needed to implement it." Candace gave Sarah an appraising look. "Your research citation index is impressive, but your operational management metrics are even better. Green Pacific runs at 30% lower administrative costs than comparable organizations." Sarah's mouth opened slightly. "You've been researching me?" "We research all potential partners thoroughly." Candace's tone was matter-of-fact. "We nearly offered you a position last year, but our intelligence suggested you weren't interested in returning to scientific work." Before Sarah could respond, Margot approached, her smile tight and eyes cold. "What a fascinating presentation, Dr. Miller." She emphasized the title with subtle mockery. "Though I wonder why someone with your qualifications chooses to work as a glorified secretary." The barb was meant to wound, but Sarah felt oddly immune. Years of self-doubt suddenly seemed like a distant memory. "Administration isn't just filing papers, Miss Reynolds. It's ensuring brilliant ideas become real-world solutions." She met Margot's gaze steadily. "Some of us prefer making actual change to simply talking about it at parties." Margot's nostrils flared. "Well, I'm sure the Calloways appreciate your enthusiasm. But don't mistake temporary attention for acceptance. These circles have standards beyond technical knowledge." Candace stepped forward. "Standards like integrity, competence, and substantial contribution, all of which Dr. Miller exemplifies." She leveled a cold stare at Margot. Perhaps you could refresh everyone's drinks, since you seem so comfortable handling service tasks. Margot blanched, turned on her heel, and retreated without another word. As the evening wound down, Sarah found herself in a small side room with both Calloway siblings, discussing potential collaboration. The siblings' excitement was contagious as they outlined their vision for combining Sarah's scientific approach with their technological resources. "We need someone who understands both the science and how to implement solutions efficiently," James explained. "Someone who can translate between researchers and operations teams. We want you to head our new marine restoration division," Candace said bluntly. "Full research budget, your choice of team members, and executive authority." Sarah's hands trembled slightly. The proposal was everything she'd once dreamed of, before budget cuts and academic politics had pushed her toward administration. "I'd need to think about it," she said carefully. "Green Pacific depends on me." "We're not asking you to abandon them," James assured her. "We're proposing a partnership that would multiply their impact. Their projects would get priority implementation." For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to imagine returning to research, not just managing others' work, but leading it herself. The possibility was both terrifying and exhilarating. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the deck of a research vessel off the Australian coast, watching as underwater drones deployed the first large-scale implementation of the Callaway Green Pacific Reef Restoration System. Beside her, James monitored the deployment data on a tablet. "Hard to believe this all started with spilled champagne," he mused. The results were already exceeding their projections. Early coral settlement rates showed 380% improvement over control sites, and fish populations were returning to previously barren areas. Sarah's team, a mix of former Green Pacific colleagues and Callaway technologists, worked in seamless coordination. The partnership had transformed both organizations. Green Pacific now served as the scientific validation arm for Callaway's restoration technologies. Their funding quadrupled and their impact expanded globally. Watching her drone operators guide the deployment, Sarah felt a profound sense of purpose. She no longer hid her expertise behind administrative efficiency. Instead, she'd found a balance, using her organizational skills to implement the science she loved. Candace joined them, tablet in hand. "The Jakarta site is reporting similar success rates," she said. "The Indonesian government wants to expand the project to 3 additional locations." The contrast to Sarah's life just 6 months earlier was stark. She traded her small apartment for a modest beachfront home where she could monitor local marine conditions. Her secondhand clothes had been replaced with practical field gear, though she still avoided the designer labels Margot had once mocked her for lacking. As the sun set over the ocean, painting the water in amber hues, Sarah leaned against the ship's railing. A message notification pinged on her tablet. A photo from the charity gala currently underway in Seattle. Green Pacific was being honored as Organization of the Year, with their new executive director accepting the award. Margot Reynolds appeared in the background of the photo, her smile strained as she applauded politely. Sarah smiled, but felt no vindication. Success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about finally being true to herself. "Having regrets about missing the gala?" James asked, joining her at the railing. Sarah shook her head. "I'm exactly where I belong." The real triumph wasn't in silencing critics or gaining recognition. It was in rediscovering her voice and using it to create change. Sometimes the most valuable talents are the ones we hide from ourselves. "Ready for tomorrow's press conference?" James asked. "The world is waiting to hear from the brilliant Dr. Miller." Sarah smiled, no longer flinching at her title. "Ready as I ever be. The greatest revelation she had learned wasn't showing others your worth. It was remembering it yourself. She watched the coral thrive beneath the waves, living proof that hidden talents, once revealed, could heal entire worlds.